So welcome everybody to this fortnight's chart delineation practice. Today I wanted to take a little bit of a different spin. So you got me today because you were going to actually have Dorothy, but she couldn't make it, and I knew that. And Courtney was going to step in, but I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just throw a different look on things, and just have a look at the idea of doing something completely different. So, how many of you guys have anything or any knowledge of numerology as such?
A little bit.
Anyone? A little bit?
Not a lot.
Asha? Not a lot?
Minimal.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, okay. So, and Carolyn, what about yourself? Numerology?
sorry?
Do you have much knowledge on numerology?
Minimal.
Good. Okay.
I have a general knowledge. That's about it.
So what I'm going to share with you today, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background, and it's relevant because I think the bit of background will probably help you understand where this all came about. So as an 18-year-old, and I'll go all the way back to then, I'd sort of started learning astrology when I was about 16 and teaching myself, not realizing that I could actually get to study. And I didn't actually start studying, when I say studying in a formal sense and getting my qualifications till I was about 21. But that didn't stop me doing consultations for people or other bits and pieces. So as a youngster, my initial getting into astrology was pretty much I didn't think it worked. So what I then did was I started calculating charts by hand. I taught myself how to do that, and literally I became a little bit like, you could nearly call it an obsession. So every day I'd be asking people at work or friends I knew, when's your birthday? When's your birth time? Blah, blah, blah. I'll do your chart for you. And I think in 6 months, someone's got music going. I think might have to get someone to mute it. And after about 6 months, I'd probably done about 500 charts, I reckon. Which sounds like a lot. It was a lot. It literally, I was doing 2 or 3 a day minimum. And I'd be sitting there at night just sort of calculating them all by hand and handwriting them. So what ended up happening is I got known by obviously all these people that I did astrology. So I'd end up at a party or a Saturday night or a Friday night out with friends. And what I found was that everyone just wanted to, read me. Usually the hand would come out, can you do me a reading? And people who had no idea, and I'd be standing there and say, hang on, it's not quite like that. You really got to have your birth time. You got to near, and I'd talk around and I'd explain things to people. But everyone just wanted to know there and then. They just wanted, well, yeah, right. And then you'd be, especially men, being a male, without being sexist, but they would be the ones that were poo-hooing the most. And usually because they didn't believe that anything about astrology. And I was a little bit like an evangelist for astrology back then. I had such a belief because I knew it worked and I wanted to tell the world. So it was, I had to learn the hard way that sometimes you just got to sit back and shut up. But, I do have Mercury in the first house in the T-square, so I can't help it. I chat away at times and I don't stop. And I've learnt to sort of, over time, slow that down a little bit. But what happened was, over the years, and this took a while, I started to realize that there seemed to be a correlation, there has to be a correlation. I used to call, and this sounds really rude to numerologists, I used to call numerology lazy man's astrology, which it sounds really awful, but it's not. Meaning that there's a lot more complexity to astrology, and numerology can be the same, but it really, works on the numbers. And if you think about systems, like you've got Vedic, traditional, and modern astrology, they all work very differently, but each system seems to work and can be used to predict and understand a person in general. So numerology to me had to have a similar setup or a similar way. So then I started to, rather than say to people, look, come back to me and I'll do a reading for you, or struggle around, I started doing things like, well, if this is the case, then the numbers in, people's numerology must relate to planets that are going or strong in their chart. Because if the numbers, usually if you talk about, say, for example, you're you're a number 7, say your life path number 7, and that's somebody who's highly spiritual by nature, intuitive, etc. You could see that 7, and also 7 is, I think it's also the number of, water and other bits and pieces. So it really comes down to 7. To me, became, oh well, that's obviously Neptune. And when you look at it that way, you can say, okay, if someone's strongly a 7 in their chart somehow, then in their numerology, I should say, then they'll be strongly Neptune will be predominant in their lives. So you can usually predict on that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the next page and just share with you my own formula of how these numbers tend to work. And then I'm going to explain what I do as a quick way of interpreting for people who might say something. And when I say party trick, it's usually the people that go, yeah, right, well, what about me then? You get that. And you go, okay, well, give me your birth date. And if they tell you the truth, then you can work on it from there. And I'll explain that in a minute. But if you have a look, and we can test this on you guys, it's great. We've got, a few people here, and we can have a look at your birth dates if you want, and then just generally do a bit of an interpretation, and we can just refer that back to planetary energies in your chart. So don't forget, this is a really, really something you learn over time, and it's an off the cuff, on the fly type of interpretation. That's the best way to put it. So this is not going to be 100%, every single time it works 100%, but I can nearly guarantee you that it will, you'll see how it tends to work and how it sort of unfolds. So if we go through these, the number 1, or and I'm talking numbers, just generally the numbers. Number 1 relates to the sun. Number 2 is the moon. Numerologists might turn around and swap 3 and 5 around. Some numerologists say that Mercury is number 3. I look at it and I really see number 3 as Jupiter. 4 being Uranus. 5 being Mercury, because if you think about it, it's the middle between 1 and 9. So Mercury is always the the one that's the mediation between the two lots of numbers. That's part of the reason. And also being a life path number 5 number myself, I think Mercury is a very strong planet in my chart in regards to how I do things. You then got number 6 is Venus. Neptune is 7, 8 is Saturn, 9 is Mars, and Pluto I gave to 0. And I'll explain to you why. Now, this is going to take, I haven't got a lot of slides here. A lot of this is going to be talking. So if you wanted to take some notes down, do that as well. That's not a bad option. And this is something that I think by the end of it, go away and try it with a few friends, or try it with people you meet, and just see what sort of response you get, see how it works, and report it back to me. I'm going to turn this into why it says life hack courses. I'm actually doing a little what I call life hack courses I'm going to put up into the community. And these are the sorts of things that will be there. So it'll be more about being able to utilize things like this in such a way when you're on the fly, and you can't necessarily access your astrology. I mean, a lot of people nowadays, we all have our phone, and we can often have apps on here to do the whole chart, and that's great. But a lot of the time, people don't have their birth time. They wouldn't have the faintest. You might not want to pull your phone out and be sitting there being too specific, and you might just want to give someone a bit of an overview. So how this works, or how I've seen to find it work, is like this. Now I'm going to try and work out where I'm going to put this little screen, because it's covering over I'll just move it over there. That's enough. All right. So here's an example. What I find is the two numbers that I use in doing an interpretation is, 1, the birth date. Okay, so the birth date often indicates, so obviously it can only be a number from 1 to 31. So you're either born on anywhere between the 1st and the 31st of a month. And then your life path number. Now, does everyone understand numerologically how you calculate your life path number? Anyone don't understand while I'm here? Okay, so just for those who don't, who might be watching, you pretty much do what I've done here for Elton John. I just picked him because I love Elton John's numerology because he has pretty much every number in it except for an 8. He's born on the 25th of the 3rd, 1947. So he has one of every number except for an 8. And so if he was born in the 1800s and he was, something else, it might have been a little bit different. But there we go. So what we do is we add up all those numerals, 2, 5, 3 for March, 1, 9, 4, and 7. That adds up to 31, and you always break that down to 1 and 3, and 1 equals 4. And if you look at his day number, he's born on the 25th, a 2 and 5, 7. Now, what I haven't done, and I probably should have done it on here, remember going back to what these numbers all represent from a planetary point of view. So if you look at it, what I tend to find is that the day number will often show you, what's the word for it, how this person presents themselves, or planets which are strong in their chart. And not necessarily, to be quite honest, I haven't got Elton John's chart in front of me, but if I was to look at it, I would say, his day number, he adds up to 7. Now, if 7's Neptune, what does he do for a living? He plays music. Okay, so we could automatically assume that he's quite intuitive, that he's musical, he's sensitive to things around him. There's a lot of things like that we could say to this. Even if we didn't know him, we could say these are the sorts of things that you're like. Now, being a 2 and a 5, I always find that the number at the front here shows you how you are up front and what's the word for it? What's pushing or motivating that to be the case. So if we look at it, we're going to say that Elton John is a Moon and Mercury to Neptune. Does that make sense? So you've got the Moon, really number 2, 5 is Mercury, and 7 being Neptune. Someone's dog's going off in the background. Whose is that? Someone's got a
You can mute anyone on your commands. So you can go ahead and just mute everybody.
I didn't realize there was a whole heap of more people in here. Hello, all. I was only seeing the five. So who else we got in here? How are you, Courtney? Hang on. Who else we got down there? Hi, all. I hope everyone can hear me. All right. Now, so this is where it becomes interesting. So if we look at this and we go, the Moon, now there's a couple of things. As I said, I haven't done a lot of notations for this, which I probably should. They will be put into the actual little course that I make on this, which will be a bit different. But the Moon, to me, is always, think about the Moon's qualities. When I ever look at this, I look at the qualities of the planet and I combine them together. So here is somebody who is, potentially in the public eye or deals with the public, because the Moon is all about the public. They're also quite sensitive to the way things are and around them, and take a lot of stuff in. They probably have a very good memory, number one, because the Moon is to do with your memory. And they're also quite private, yet at the same time quite social, because you've got a 5 here, which is motivating it. 5 is all about communication. 5 is all about Mercury. So it's all about being out there, communicating with the public. So how does he communicate with the public? In a very spiritual, or in this case, musical sense. Now, if I was to say that to Elton John without knowing him, and funnily enough, I'm actually at 25, I'm born on the 25th of December, I look at it and say, what do I tend to do with my life? Okay, so 5, if you think about Mercury, I spent a lot of my time dealing with the public in a sales role on communication products, funnily enough. So in essence, it still works in a similar manner. And yet 7, at the same time, in my whole way of doing things about that and how I went about it, was I worked a little bit unconventionally, and I worked a lot on intuition, which is obviously that 2 and the 7. And when I relied on that, I had most success. And if you talk to Elton John, he'd probably say, well, when I use my intuition and I'm trying to put things down on paper, which is Mercury, and it's music, then I have most success. And if you think about it, that's more than likely what he's doing. The other interesting thing is we then look at the life path number, and his life path number is the 314. Now, the interesting thing is I also take into account these. So 3 is Jupiter, and 1 is the sun. Now, can you see where in this instance, and 4 being Uranus, he's a star. So not only, so he's got this ability to be, quite a magnanimous person, which is the sun and Jupiter together, in such a way that he's unconventional, very unconventional, very Uranian in his way of doing things. He's a little bit, on the fringe of society, creating new things, but he's also doing it in such a way he's got a lot of, charisma and power and ability to do so. So his and the other thing with the number 4, it's there are you need to probably understand a little bit more about numerology, because I'm giving you the raw versions of it, i.e., I say Uranus. But if you look at 4 in numerology, there is also the capacity that it's quite industrious and business-like. Okay. Teresa's just put in here, my favorite numerology-based book is The Life You Were Born to Live by Dan Millman. So there's a book which you could refer to. I've had a number of numerology books in my time. I can't remember off the top of the head some of them, but they've all been quite interesting when you read them. But I often, as I said, relate these in an astrological sense. Now, what have I done here? Is I've gone back to the same one, have I? Oh no, we're going to go back. All right, so we're back to where the planets are here. Does anybody want to give this a go? I.e., let's do some interpret. Anyone want to throw their birth date out, and we'll just all have a bit of a go at interpreting? Does anyone want to have a look at how this might work for them? Going to have a volunteer, or no one wants to tell me their birth date?
Use mine if you want.
All right, Courtney, what's yours? You're the 25th as well, though.
No, I'm March 26th.
You're
Let's do
26th.
Teresa's. Let's do Teresa's. She put it in the chat. We have Teresa, and she's 10/22, 1969.
10/22/69. Okay, so now I always remember that you guys go backwards compared to us down here in the
October 22nd, 22nd of October. I help you.
I worked that one out. I'm just having a bit of fun. So we're talking about a 2 and 2 is 4, 5, 15, and another 15 is 30. So life path is 30. Is that right?
Yep.
Teresa, you would confirm that, and your day number is 22. Now, what I probably should be doing is making this available for everyone to see on the screen. What about I do this? If I
Then hit the little crayon on the side, annotate, and you can type it in.
Okay, previous and previous. Where is the little thing on the side?
Maybe you're not seeing it. Do you want me to do it?
No, it's just renaming stuff. Where I'm already sort of sharing a full screen of this. Okay, you've done
You
it.
see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. All right. How did you do that? I'll have to find out where it is in Zoom. I must be a Zoom numbie. All right. So the 22nd of October. Can you put in there day number 22 equals 2 plus 2 equals 4? And the life path is 30. Thanks, Courtney.
Anytime.
What would I do without you? Okay.
Here to help as always.
All right. So let's have a look at that. So here's somebody who turns around and says, I'm born on the 22nd. Now, the funny thing is with that, a 2 and 2 is a double moon. So here's someone who's probably quite sensitive towards things and very intuitive, and adding up to 4 means that I would definitely say this is somebody who is very intuitive, very much the interest in things like the occult or astrology, because it's a 4, it's Uranian by nature, and somebody who's also a little bit different. With a life path of 30, I want to also explain that that's also a Jupiter-Pluto. So this is where it becomes interesting, because sometimes I know I'm going to have to try and work out how would I interpret that. And this is what some people do. Well, sometimes things come to you very quickly, and other times you're on the fly and you're going, how do I interpret that? So here's someone who is uh, moon with Uranus, and then life path Jupiter, Pluto adding up to Jupiter. Okay. So when I see Pluto or a zero, it sort of adds emphasis. It adds a level of intensity. So my question to you is, this may be somebody who is an eternal student. Would you consider yourself a little bit that way, Teresa?
Yep.
Okay. Somebody who is, the other thing with this is somebody who might enjoy travel or has moved around a little bit in their lives. Correct?
I like being home.
You like being home. Okay, so what
I've been around a few places, but I like being home.
yeah, so what's overriding that is that moon. Have a think about it. Okay. But is your home someplace that you have that's a little bit unconventional? You like to be surrounded by a lot of things because that's the moon and moon together. But it's not your typical house, is that in some way? Would that be right or no?
Um, Somewhat. Yep.
Somewhat. Example, you said something about I won't go and live in a tiny house because I would have to take all my astrology books and other books.
Yeah, I need all my books.
Yes. Okay. So the eternal student, Jupiter, Pluto, here's somebody who is, in this case, I'm just going to be fairly general. They're obviously into astrology. They're more of a homebody with that 2+2, the moon and moon. The other thing I would turn around and say, when I see a double moon, it's going to say things like, in your life, your mother may have had a very important role in some way. Whether that be positive or negative can be determined on how you respond to that as a number 4. With the life path being Jupiter and Pluto and 30, I would nearly say that there's a part of you may needed to have get away from your home for some reason and have more independence because it was a bit intense living at home or there were certain control issues going on. And that's why your home now is important to you, but it's not set up the way you were traditionally brought up to be.
That sounds good. Yep.
Okay.
And
So-
I'm a Cancer rising, so that that
Well, there's
moon
your
really
double
plays a
moon.
part there.
Okay. So there's your 2 and 2. What I've just done there is taken that tiny little bit of conversation, not knowing Teresa's background, and given her a bit of an interpretation. So what I say, this is life hacks. This is when someone at a party goes, well, tell me something about me. This is the sort of little bits of information you can extract. Now, can I ask a question? You got Cancer rising, so we can see that moon working. Where's your Uranus? How strong is that in your chart?
It's in my Libra 4th house, and it's
Okay.
actually conjunct my Venus.
Well, there you go. So think
I'm
about
very
that.
independent.
If we're talking about the 2 and 2 being 2 moons, and then she got a Uranus in the 4th house, then it's all, to me, that's all interrelated into respect to how you see and how your home situation may be. Now, what about Jupiter and Pluto in your chart? How do they fit into the picture?
My Jupiter's also in Libra in my 4th house, and then my Pluto is in Virgo, my 3rd house.
In your 3rd house. Okay. Are there any strong aspects or components that go on between any of those planets? Or you're
Not so much Pluto. It's kind of on its own there.
okay.
Let's see. Hold on, I'm bringing up my chart real quick. And yeah, my Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, Sun, and are all in my Libra 4th house.
Okay. So you got a big stacked 4th house.
Yeah.
Okay. So the natural ruler of the 4th house being the moon shows that you've got a very, and we talked about this, the number, the 30 being, you've got Jupiter in there as well, but also the fact that the Pluto may not be Pluto itself. It might just mean, remember I said 0 adds an intensity, like a Plutonian intensity. So it means that you could say your home is the place you want to spend a lot of your time, which is what you're describing here, and you said that before. But also where you do a lot of your learning, etc. But the other thing is with Uranus, with the 4, I would nearly say, although you might have a social nature, you're not necessarily somebody who runs out and wants to party all the time, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm definitely an introvert.
Yeah, definitely more of a I prefer to stay at home and do my study. The other thing is take into account is when you're doing these sorts of things, remember we're talking 22nd of October. So if we were doing that today, I also look at things like, is there any particular, does anyone know what I do? Because just the way my brain works is I will tend to do things like look at the 22nd of October and say, well, where's that positioned? Okay, so that's going to be right at the end of Libra on the edge of Scorpio. So then I look at it and say, that's where the sun will be positioned? What outer planets are aspecting that at the moment? I try and do a bit of a mental note. So I find out if there's anything aspecting the sun at the time. And if there is, that might give you insight into going, well, this is the person as a nature. If we have late degrees of Libra, what's hitting your sun at the moment? You're talking about where's you would have just had that Neptune doing a quincunx. Is that right? Yes.
Yes. I've and the sun right now is actually conjunct my ascendant at
Oh,
the
the
time.
sun, yeah. But I'm sort
Yeah.
of thinking more about your sun itself at late degrees of Libra, i.e., remember, I don't have access to a chart. I'm
Yep.
just using a birth date. And somebody said, I'm born on the 22nd of October. I could look at that now and go, okay, well, not that long ago, you will have had Saturn and Neptune doing a quincunx to that. And I'd say there would be some fairly big adjustments in your life you've had to make at the moment. Some of those being a little bit of, that may be surrounded by a little bit of loss or sacrifice. And that you're in a process of readjusting and you're just coming out of that phase now. If I said that to you, would that also tie in with where you're at?
Yes.
Okay. So here we are using little life hacks just by going, let's see if I can mentally see there's a aspect hitting the sun or has been recently. I'm looking at the life path number, not knowing that Teresa here with a 2 and 2 has a Cancer rising. She also has Uranus in the 4th house, which is associated where the Cancer's natural home, or I should say the moon's natural home is. And we have this person with a very strong capacity to want us to study and learn as a bit of a life student. Simple analysis, but if you're sitting in the corner of a party and you're just wanting to sit there and have a drink and relax, but someone's giving you a hard time and the next person's putting their hand out going, can you read me next? This is sort of where you can spend that 3 to 4 minutes mentally and just give them an indication. So I've had situations and, where people have gone, I've talked about someone and I've had, usually men, I hate to say it, but they're usually, oh yeah, look, psychics, they're just good at reading people. They just know what to say. And then I turn around and I've said to him, well, when's your wife's birthday then? And he'll give me his wife's birthday and I'll start telling them, and this is in a social situation with people I know, and that guy looks at a friend and says, have you been telling him about what she does? And they go, no, haven't said a thing. And that's when you sort of start going and your credibility tends to sort of, hey, this is not just a game. This is something that we can, and I'm only general, and I make it clear to people, I'm only generalizing, and I'm doing this purposely. I'm not looking at anyone's chart. I'm using these as examples just to see how we go. But let's clear out that one. Do you want to try yours, Courtney? Like you said, you're the 26th of March. What year? You're
1981.
oh, that's right. You're the baby of the class.
26. That's very generous of you. I'm in my 40s.
Yeah, 26. So you're an 8-day number. And 26, 3 is, what's it? 8, 11, 21,
Plus.
and 9 is 30. You're a 30. You're another one.
Yeah, me and Teresa, we really locked in with doing calculations. We're right here.
Okay, so can you tell me, can you write that down as a day number 26 equals 8? and a life path number of 30 again. So, which is Jupiter and Pluto. So, does anyone else want to have a go at this, or should I just do another example? That looks like I'm going to do another example.
Do one more.
What's that?
Do one more.
We'll come to you in a minute, Asher. We'll do yours in a sec. All right, so let's do this. So 26 day number. So here's somebody that's basically Moon, Venus, and Saturn. Okay. So you're talking about Saturn and the Moon represents somebody who, again, being number 2, is usually going to be doing something that's out there and either to do with the public or having to be involved in the public in some way. And number 6 is, in this case, is Venusian. So somebody who is, how would I put it? And with an 8, see, that part of the problem is I've learnt my own ways of interpreting this, and trying to relay that across sometimes may not come across the greatest way. But a 2 and 6 is like Moon, Venus with Saturn. So if you look at that in simple terms, I would say that a Moon, Venus, Saturn is somebody who is loving, caring, and giving, but not necessarily open about it. Because the 8 represents somebody who possibly grew up in a fairly traditional environment. And I don't know what that was.
You want to go into the participants tab, and you can hit mute on
Where is
everyone except for
participant?
that should be at the bottom.
So mute. Oh, okay.
You got it. Okay.
Most people have muted. I'll just mute Carolyn. I'll mute Cheryl. Oh no, Courtney, I've just muted you, but I'll unmute you.
Are you talking to me? Sorry.
No, I'm going to unmute you. You can still hear me, can't you, Carolyn? I mean, Courtney.
I can.
Okay, so it's just you and I in this case. All right, for the moment.
All right.
And pop out of that. Let me go to. You're sharing my screen. I'm just going to go back to my shared screen. Oh, there we go. Hang on. What screen can you guys see?
We see planets and numbers with where I've put up my birth date, sun, moon, Jupiter.
Oh,
You want to go back? Go.
I'm going to stop sharing and go back to where we were. You may have
It's
to
not
do
easy
it.
in the hot seat with Zoom, is it? It's
Well,
a
no,
little stressy.
not for me. Anyway, I'll have to probably try and hopefully I won't have to edit too much of this out, but we'll give it a go. So, okay, you want to throw those back in there again, Courtney, when you get a sec. But ultimately, we're talking a 26-8. So, on a day number, that to me is somebody who grew up in a fairly traditional environment, a loving family, but traditional. That would be generally how I would see it. It may not necessarily be an easy scenario when you were growing up. There would possibly be potential conflict between the parents. I say that because there's a 2 and an 8 in there. That's the Moon and Saturn. If not conflict, then quite a traditional sort of upbringing. Any of that sort of thing relate to you at all, Courtney?
Yes, I'm from New England. Very strong New England grandmother. Highly influenced. My parents are divorced, and they're very dramatically divorced. So there's a
Okay.
lot of
All right. So there's a bit. So the interesting thing is with a 26 or an 8 number being strongly Saturnian. Okay. So if you talk about the overall day number, if someone's quite strongly Saturnian, there's a lot of life lessons. Sometimes the early life of that person may be a little bit difficult. I say a little bit, but you know what Saturn can be like, can be quite difficult at times. And generally speaking, I think you sort of said it, rather dramatic. You might find that some people born on a 26th day have this traditional family, or you could say something that is, what's the word for it? On the outside to everyone else, the family appears to be perfect, while there's a lot of dysfunction sometimes on the inside. That's sometimes what happens there as well. Life path 30. Here's another Jupiter Pluto. And we're talking about a 3. So Jupiter Pluto, but it's also Jupiter. Here's someone who has no choice but to be in some form of education, travel, foreign correspondent in some way, or doing things with people who are on a sort of like a you could say on a worldly level. Now, remember, your 30 is a little bit different to Teresa's. Remember, Teresa was a 224. So, although the other thing is, the number 8 being Saturn can also bring you to some sort of elevation, and the Moon and Venus together would mean, from a public point of view, that you possibly are loved. And at the same time, sometimes Saturn is that the public can sometimes want to drag you down, right? Which is also a pain. So this is sort of what I'd be sort of saying to somebody. In a simple sense, you have a great capacity to work with people. Now, the other interesting thing is the Moon, when it says working with the public, is also Moon, the number 2, I should say, on there, 2 and 6, is you will never have a problem getting a job, because the Moon, as long as you're willing to work in different fields that you don't mind working, getting your hands dirty. That's what it comes down to. And I would say that to somebody. You said you worked in, what do you call it, as a waitress, correct?
Yes. I worked at the airlines when I was in college, and I
Yes.
was a waitress for a long time. And then I was a massage therapist at a spa for about 10 years.
See?
So definitely I'm an old hand at working with the public.
Yep. And Venus,
And
which is to do with the spa and the touch.
mhm.
And also, and the other thing is, what makes me laugh the most is this life path 30 is you have worked in those fields, but you've educated in every one of those fields. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I always end up training people. So a
There you
lot
go.
of my education is in non-traditional, like non-academic fields.
Yes.
It's like, how do you do something? Like, try to teach someone how to do massage is like a really interesting thing, because it's not verbal, but
Yes.
you have to
But you're
tell
having
them,
to do it.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that 30, I often find with 30, because it's Jupiter Pluto, and especially with an 8 there, it means, to me, I'd look at that and I'd say, although you may have to work hard, you'll always be surrounded financially by what you need. That's what it comes down to the point where you could easily get to a point in your life where you're financially better off than most. Okay, because Jupiter and Pluto can bring that. It brings it. It's sort of, it's the bringer of wealth in some ways. You look at someone like Mick Jagger with his Jupiter Pluto conjunction in the first house, and you go, well, he's in Leo, and he's been that star for a long time, whether you like him or not. But as an example, but yes, so that Jupiter Pluto can do that. With the Saturn here, it means that you will find, I would say to this person, I would say, whatever troubles or hardship you've had growing up, or family dysfunction at different times, you will not take that with you. You will spend a lot of time working through it and trying to get rid of it out of your life, because that's what Pluto does. It wants to transform and change, and Jupiter will give you that opportunity. So that would be a fairly quick analogy for somebody who gave me your birth details without knowing too much about them. Trouble is, I do know a few things about you, Courtney, so I can.
I know. That's not really fair.
It's a little bit unfair. But has anyone got any questions so far? Because I'm taking through this as a bit of an example. But has anyone got some feedback? Has anyone lost on something?
I will say I have in my chart Sun opposite Saturn exact, and
Okay,
I have
yep.
Jupiter conjunct Saturn. So it's interesting to see all of that pop.
It's
And I also have
very
Moon in the first
accurate.
house.
Yeah.
And I have Sag rising, which you know.
Exactly. Well, you got a Sag rising. And the other thing is, where's your Pluto in your chart? Just curious.
It's in Libra. It's also in it's so I have Saturn and Jupiter at 5 and 6 Libra, and then my Pluto is at like 23 or something. So it's like a sign stellium
Okay.
in Libra.
Signs.
And then 3 planets in Aries across
And your moon is in
Sag.
Sag. Okay, well, there you go. So even the moon is in Sag. So there's a strong Jupiterian and Saturnian influence in your chart, as well as the moon. But in general, with that lovely little Venus here, you're going to be looked after in some ways. Which is a nice thing. Why are you looked after? This is the other thing. Remember that this is only going to look after someone if they're prepared to work hard and learn. But because your life path is Jupiter Pluto, you're prepared to the classic example of that is, no, I don't want to live the way I have. I want a better life. And that's pretty much the driving force behind it. This is the sort of, I just want to say, has anyone got any other questions on this before we move on? Do you want to volunteer your details, Asha?
Yeah, we've got maybe 10 minutes left.
Oh, no, I've got a bit more than that. I've got an hour and a half of this. So, you've got
Okay,
10
cool.
minutes.
Oh, no, no, I thought we finished at 9 or
No, I go for about 90 minutes on this one. So as long as we're
Okay.
all having fun, we can stay on a bit longer. So I don't really mind. And if anyone needs to run off, they can. So Asha,
You always catch the recording.
yeah.
I'm 10 February 89.
Okay. So you want to put that in there, Courtney? So
And
that's
then I'll type out the rest. Hold on.
okay. So 10, that's a 1, 2 is 3, 13, and 7. Don't get me wrong. There you got to crack me up. So you're another 30.
All together. Isn't this fun?
Did you know that, Asha? Your life.
I know that my life path number is 3.
Yeah, but it's a 33. We've had three
Yeah.
of you in a row, all with the same life path number. That's hilarious.
Would this be correct? 1 plus 0?
Yes.
Would you make that 1 or you make it
It's
10?
That's a 1.
No, it's a 1.
Yeah.
But that's a Sun Pluto. Okay. And then your life path being that Jupiter and Pluto as well. So we've got it's quite a powerful combination. So when I see someone who's born on the 10th, you look at it and say, okay, the sun is definitely a strong planet in their chart in some way. But with the 10 means it's even more intensified. So my question to you, looking at that straight away, I sometimes find that with the Sun Pluto, there is a direct, and I'm just trying to work out how to put this, because sometimes it can be that way and not. There's a definite strong relationship in some form with your father, because that's the Sun and Pluto. And it can be either way. It can be that you're very, very close, or that he's not been in your life for some reason for a long period. Would you like to confirm either of those, just so that we're sort of...
Yeah, well, my mother passed when I was young, and so he's my sole parent, and we
There
are
you go.
close. Yeah.
So funny thing is, sometimes I find that's the case, but I would nearly have said, you just summed it up though, and this is where you can get it wrong. Sometimes with a 10, I've seen the Sun and Pluto, but because you've got a Jupiter Pluto as well, that's why I know there's 2 Plutos here, and I'm thinking there's a bit of intensity. Did you travel around with your dad at all as a youngster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of international travel when I was young.
Yeah. See what I mean? So we're talking about that Jupiter Pluto once again working. Now, sometimes it's interesting the fact that you said your mum passed away when you were younger, because sometimes this Sun Pluto could be that your dad passed away when you were younger. But the reason it's not that way, and it was your mum, is because the Sun is very strong in your life. That Sun, that 1 and 0. Let's say, for example, your life path was 20, for example. So let's say it was 20 and it was a moon Pluto. you might find that it was dad that passed away and mum had the big influence over your life because there's a moon brought into it, but it's not. In this case, it's that. So I would also look at this and say this is somebody who is extremely independent, being the sun, being a number one. So think about Leo, okay, and you think about the sun and its nature, somebody who's creative, somebody who wants to be in control of their own life, somebody who possibly can be a little bit too, not controlling, but they have a need for control. It's a fear of losing control. They want to have control over their life. And generally speaking, the control they have over their life, because it's Jupiter, Pluto again as a 30, is you have the capacity to create and make good, make money, be successful, and bring things to you over time. The thing is, with that Sun Pluto, there's a strong desire for independence, and sometimes the more responsibility you get, sometimes the harder it is on you, and you nearly go through times when you're constantly purging or changing your life around. That's sort of in a simple form how I'd interpret that. Now, if you were to meet, how is that as an interpretation, just in general? You know.
Yeah, I think independence and control is definitely a big theme in my life.
Yeah. Okay. So now what we didn't do with you, Courtney, as well, which I'll go back to for a second, and then I'll come back to you, Asha, is that remember we talked about the idea you're born on the 26th of March. I would look at that and go, okay, here's someone with something where they've got the sun at probably around 3 degrees, maybe 4 degrees of Aries. Is that correct?
My Venus is at 3, my Sun is at 6, and my Mars is at
Okay.
7. I'm about
Sun's-
to get hammered by
Okay,
Saturn
Sun's
and
at
Neptune.
6. So for me, when I'm in the southern hemisphere, and Asha will find this, I tend to find that because we're a little bit ahead of time, the sun doesn't move often into Aries until the 22nd rather than the 21st. So sometimes what we look at it and go, oh, so that's on the 22nd. You're born on the 26th, don't know the time. So I'm going to assume that it's probably 4 degrees ahead. So there's usually the rule of thumb is you can generally move forward the sun by a degree one day to a degree to a day. So the same as your sort of when you're doing your progressions. So it's if someone's born on the 26th of March and the sun moved into Aries on the 22nd of March, in simple forms, that means it's 4 days later, you can have your sun around 4 degrees, but Courtney's confirmed it's around 6. So I
I'm
would
born
be
like at almost midnight, so it's like almost the 27th.
okay. So therefore, you're nearly the 27th. And not only that, you're probably born in the US in a place whereby the sun moved in on the 21st into Aries, not the 22nd. So that's nearly there's the 6 degrees. So that's what I'm saying. You can get this slightly out. The more information you get, do you know where you were born? Okay, I was born in New York. Okay, and you don't know what time? Oh, sometime around midnight. I think might have been nearly close to the 27th. If someone told you that, you might be able to work it out and say, okay, well there might be 5 or 6 degrees. And at that point in time, you go, all right, well, Neptune and Saturn at the moment are running around 1 and 2 degrees of Aries. No, it hasn't hit yet, but it's coming. So you might be able to put a bit of an elaboration on that and sort of say, if you had a mentally knowing that Saturn's going to take a little while, I'd be saying over the next 12 months, 18 months, you're going to be going through some big reevaluation of where you sit in life and what you're going to be doing. You may find that things become, you feel a bit uncomfortable. You're going to have to make some changes, and in those making changes, you will sort of it will escalate and sort of when it's not escalate, bring out things for you to change to redo your life in some way. I don't even know if I'm saying this correctly. I've gone off on a mental blank. Think about Sun and Saturn together. So I'm going through 1,000 things, but that's the sort of thing. Now, if you're going back to you, Asha, the 10th of February.
Can I just ask Courtney how you feel about that?
About what was it? Something
about Luke's summary.
There's going to be upheaval,
yeah,
or something.
Oh,
You
I wasn't
know,
going to say upheaval. I was going to say you're going to have a restructure.
Yeah.
I do
That's
think so because we're in a conversation. My partner wants to move to Europe, speaking of moving things, and I'm
yeah.
like, okay, but like you have a kid, like where you go, like how? So anyway, that's like a thing. But I don't know. I have like such a strong Saturn and my moon is conjunct Neptune in my chart. So like I feel those are my familiar foes. Like
Yeah.
I know
Mm.
them. I know them. We've
I,
suffered together.
yeah. I would
So
look
I
at
don't know.
going back to yours and being an 8-day number. Remember, you're an 8-day number. And I'd be
Hmm.
looking at that going Saturn. So something fairly strong is going to hit your sun. And I'd go, generally speaking, that would probably be an elevation of your status in a
I
positive
like
way,
that.
right? Because one of the reasons I say that is anyone who's strongly Saturnian, their life tends to be more improved after they've learned a lot of lessons when they're young. So by the time they get to their 40s, things start to then blossom more. So the Saturn doesn't necessarily bring the bad lessons, it often brings a time of restructuring. Oh, I've got to do some more work on this. I've got to do some hard stuff on it, but I'll get there and it's going to make a bit of a big change for me.
I also have my Saturn is in Libra exalted and my Sun is Aries exalted. So I have to believe that I'm gonna like this is gonna be good.
Are they in opposition natally?
Yes, exact.
Oh, exact opposition.
626.
Okay.
So this is like it's been breathing down my neck my whole life. I'm pretty comfortable with Saturn.
So
Mm.
therefore, you would turn around and say that the crises of Saturn or issues that may come out may not be yours, but your husband's,
Maybe it is.
because it's the sun.
And you know what?
That's another thing
We
to
all
also take into consideration, everybody, and that is if you're talking to, in this case, a lady, and it's the sun being affected by a transit, and she's married, it may be coming via the partner, and especially if that's an opposition. But we don't know that in this instance. We didn't know
and
that.
he's a Leo with
Yeah.
Pluto opposing right now. So
Okay. So he
deep.
wants to upend his life in some ways. Anyway, that's another story. We just touched on that one. We'll go away from that for a while because we don't want to go too far into that one. Okay,
Gotcha.
Ashley, coming back to you being born on the 10th of February. So this is where I go, okay, and then I have to try and make a mental, evaluation. So part of this you can't do it without sort of just learning how to try and identify that, say, the sun's position. Sometimes it's too hard for you. Sometimes you go, oh, well, I don't really know. But in this case, I would look at it, and 1989 is not a leap year. I know that one for a fact. So we only have 28 days in February. You're talking about the sun moved into in February, I should say. So the sun will move into Pisces probably around on the 21st. Go back from there 11 days. So you're going to say your sun should be around 19 degrees of Aquarius. Is that right?
21.
21. So once again, I'm out by a little bit of time, and possibly because of the fact that maybe it's in the south, but it also could just be
Yeah.
me. So this is where you run into potential problems. And that's why I'm doing this live, and I'm just going, let's see how we go. Because this is how I'm evaluating it. I'm just sharing with you how my brain's working. And here we were, I was out by 2 degrees. Okay, which will make a difference if I'm trying to look for major planets aspecting a sun position. So you can stuff it up, but at the end of the day, it gives you a good guide. And then you'd look at it and say, okay, and I would be basing this on, say, 19 or 20, not 21. I think what's running around as a major planet at 19 or 20 degrees at the moment, off the top of my head, nothing. So I would probably leave that and go, well, unless I could, mentally work out where my semi-squares and all that sort of stuff are, and I go, no, I'm not going to bother with that. Because even at that, you could say at 20, you could turn around and say, well, something's got to get to 5 degrees of going back of a cardinal sign. So anything at 5 degrees of a cardinal sign, blah 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 blah, and that's how I'd work it. But don't
Yeah.
forget, I'm doing this as an astrologer who's practice at trying to work that out. And even then I'm stuffing it up because I'm doing this on the fly. That's the whole point. This is something you're doing.
It's still reasonably accurate, I think.
Yeah, it's still reasonably accurate. The interesting thing
Also,
is,
in traditional astrology, it's by entire signs is how you're making aspects. So it's
Yes.
like you can say, like, let's give yourself a little grace here.
yeah, maybe I tend to try and be 100% on the ball. But here's the situation. I love the fact that when we interpret this in simple terms, Asha has lost her mum when she was young. So that Sun Pluto, so she's got a very strong relationship with dad. And she spent a lot of time traveling overseas when she was young with her father. I mean, that's the Sun, Jupiter, and Pluto all together. Throw them all in there. And in essence, that shaped your life. And that's where I see this relationship of the numerology showing wherever the rest of the chart sits. Can you share with us, Asha, what's your rising sign?
Taurus.
Taurus. Now, if you look at this, do we see anything Taurian in here by nature? Not really, do we? Okay, but we do have a strong Pluto. Where is your Pluto in your chart?
In my 7th, and it's got a pretty tight opposition to Mars in the 1st.
Okay, so there we have this Pluto in the 7th. So this to me, what I would also say, by the way, when I see this Sun Pluto and Jupiter Pluto, I would turn around and say, here's somebody who's going to be attracted to fairly intense, powerful situations. Somebody who wants to dig into the meaning of life, because the Jupiter Pluto, somebody who wants to understand the mechanics of how things work, why they work, and wants to have a very clear relationship with those things. You might even find that what I like is the Sun and Jupiter is that the Sun Jupiter with Pluto can be a little bit of like you might be somebody, and this could be your Pluto 7th house, who doesn't necessarily like to control their relationships, but likes to feel they are in control of their relationships. And that's probably got a lot to do with the fact that in your young years, you lost your mum.
Mm.
In other words, to feel secure, I have to feel like I'm controlling my world around me. And that's not necessarily a conscious thing.
I think that my early life was very out of control. And
Yes.
so as an adult, it's like that factor of like that independence of feeling like if I don't take charge, then I'm going to be victim to my life.
See, Pluto.
Mm.
Very strong Plutonian energies in just what you said. So I can hear little kitties.
Yeah.
Speaking of out of control,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about life. All right, now let's jump to anyone else want to have a go at this? Anyone?
Dude, we did Teresa, me, and Asha. Let's do Cheryl. Do you want to do your Cheryl?
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, great. Let's get you started. What's your birthday?
August 7th, 1985.
Okay, 7 August is 1985.
Yes.
All right. So that is, we have 7
7
plus
day,
8 equals
15,
15.
25,
And then that is
38.
6.
Is it 38 or 36? Hang on. 7 and 8 is 15, and 10 is 25, and then 13 is 38.
So, but now in numerology, would you do 15 become 6, or do you do it as 1 and 5?
No, it's just because she's born on you're born on the 7th of the
Oh,
8th.
I see.
Did you say that
I'm
you're a
making it
7-day number? Is
complicated.
that right, Cheryl?
Say that again?
You're born on the 7th of August?
Yes.
Okay, so the day number is 7. So write that down as day number 7. And then the life path is the addition of everything. So it's 7 and 8 is 15. I always go 19 is just 10. So it's 15 plus 10 is 25. Plus 8 and 5 is 13. So 25 and 13 is 38. So this is an interesting one because you're a 38-11.
Okay.
Okay. So I think Courtney's going to put those in. So you're a 7-day number with a 38, 11. 11 is also a 2. Okay. So, but it's 11. There's a difference. So, one of the things we haven't touched on, and I'm glad this has come up, and I didn't touch on it before either when we were talking about was it Carolyn? Were you the 22nd? Was that right? Or who was the 22nd? Born on the
That
20th?
was me.
Oh,
Teresa.
Teresa.
So Cheryl's a 1/1, so she's like a double sun, right? And
Yeah,
and
that's
she's
right.
and she's a Leo, so that
Yep.
makes sense, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Double sun, but adding
Okay.
up to the moon.
Ah,
So, because 11 is, but don't forget, we'll go through it. But going back, numerology wise, 11 and 22 are master numbers, and so is 33. So, generally, in a numerology sense, they don't break down 11, they don't break down 22. They leave it as 22 and they leave it as 11, and they have their own interpretations. But from an astrological point of view, I'm sort of bypassing that a little bit and going, I'm just going to take it and break it down into planetary energies. But here's someone whose day number is 7. Now, I will emphasize again, I often find that the day number is how someone, it's nearly like your ascendant. It's like how you project to the world, how they see you. It's how you see yourself in the world. And your life path is a bit more like your sun. It's like the part of you that's behind it all, that's motivating it all. That's nearly a little bit like how I see them working. And don't ask me how I see them working like that. That's just purely experience. That's just come from doing this over and over again with different people at different times. It's not like I go out every day and I do this for somebody. But if somebody asks me, and I'm, as I said, I'm out somewhere, and I go, I can get, oh well, look, give me your birth details, and then I can rattle off a few things, and I can get a general idea of, if there's any major planets hitting, etc., etc., and then you can have a conversation around that. But with the 7-day number, here's someone who's highly spiritual, somebody who's highly sensitive, and probably quite psychic. Because think about all the Neptunian qualities. Okay, somebody who may have a bit of an addictive personality. You got to be aware of that or be careful of that sometimes. But generally speaking, somebody who's highly compassionate, highly sensitive, and giving as a general rule. So nearly a little bit self-sacrificing. Sometimes I find people with a 7-day number work in a field which is very Neptunian. So they could work in an institution, they could be a nurse, they could be a carer, they could be a musician. We talked about, say, Elton John. But don't forget, he was at 25. This could be somebody who works as a psychic. It's those sorts of things. Now, if you go to your life path, we've got Jupiter and Saturn, and they make a sun, moon, right? So a sun being the 1-1, 2 suns, and the moon. So this is a fairly strong scenario. So this is somebody, to me, the 7 is private, and that 11 is all about having no choice but to be highly independent, to stand on their own 2 feet, to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, but are also pushed out into the public and having to deal with people on a fairly, not on a day-to-day basis, but by your nature, you're going to have to deal with or work with people on an ongoing basis as you establish yourself into the world from a business point of view and a work point of view and that type of thing. Now, that's just general overview. Did any of that work with you, Cheryl? You want to elaborate?
Yeah, actually very, very much. It's a different way of thinking about myself than the natal chart, but I actually do identify with the Neptune day planet as you described it.
Yes, because whether you like it or not, so you'll have, in this instance, with a life path of 38 and it's a master number of 11, when I see 2 1s like that, I see a situation where a couple of things happen. And that is somebody's so independent, they might find it hard to form relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. Meaning They like things done their own particular way. And it's not necessarily that you think it's wrong, right, or in between. It's you won't back down from what it is that you need, what it is that you feel is right. And there's a strong sense of independence. And when I see two ones like that, I see it as two individuals. So it's a bit like saying, when I say hard sometimes to form relationships, it means if you're going to end up in a long-term close relationship, you're going to need somebody who's as independent as you, that you align yourselves with common interests. And that's how I would say this to somebody. And once you do that, because it's a two, you're looking for sometimes the perfect partner. And that could be where, the seven, which has a lot of idealism and it wants to believe everything's going to be perfect, a little bit of rose-colored glasses, that sometimes you got to be a little bit careful. Your level of ability to accept might be your life lesson. So sometimes you might have to go, you know what? I don't have to be, someone doesn't have to fit into the perfect mold. They can be themselves and I can be myself. As long as we've got common interests, we're going to have this and form this great, family and relationship down the track. It's nearly like that's how I would describe it to somebody. Does that make any sense?
It does. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So can you almost guess what someone's rising sign is by their day number? Would you have a guess like what her ascendant is?
You possibly could, but you could get it wrong because, like, for example, if I can use mine as an example, my day number is 25, which is a 7, which is to me, that's Moon, Mercury, Neptune. You put the three together. My rising sign Sagittarius. But let me explain something. My Moon is opposing my Neptune from the 6th to the 12th, very closely and not far from the ascendant and descendant axis. And Mercury is in my first house in the T-square. So despite being the Sag rising, all those planets are very predominant in how they pan out in my chart. So you're not necessarily going to pick the rising sign that easily, but you are going to, by this, nearly pick up on a different way of honing in on energies that are operating in the chart, planetary energies. And that's why I think this works reasonably well. And I say reasonably because it's not foolproof. And it's also very much open to interpretation because it's a bit like practicing anything. I mean, I wanted to do it this way. I wanted to just go, okay, let's throw them up there and see what I get. And I wanted to do it in a sense that it's just rattling off the tongue and trying to combine them all together. It's it's difficult because it doesn't follow the formula that an astrology chart does. And the thing is though, if you're sitting in a pub and you got a glass of wine in your hand and somebody's hammering you and you want to and wants to know something, what's going on and how they are as a person, this is a way of putting them at ease. It's a technique you can use to go, well, here's some insights, and then they walk away questioning. Sometimes, and this is what happens more often than not, I've got to say it this way, this could probably be the thing that either stops you getting a consultation with someone or gets you a consultation with someone. I've had an Uber driver say to me after having this sort of a conversation on the way to the airport, then ring me and hassle me to do a reading for him. Yet I've had other people that I've seen, out, and you do this sort of thing and they go, oh, that's really interesting. And to some degree, you might even scare them off. It depends on the individual. So it's a different way of looking at things, I suppose. But Cheryl, any other comments you want to say? I mean, I was just being fairly general. Let's have a quick look. What's your rising sign?
Natally Leo.
Okay. And your sun sign's Leo as well.
Yes.
So is your sun in the first or the seventh or the 12th house?
First.
By whole sign, but what about by your ascendant? What's your ascendant?
So I'm 14 Leo sun, 4 Leo ascendant. So it doesn't
It's
matter what
definitely in the
house it's
first.
in.
Okay, it's
It's
definitely in
still
the first.
first house.
What I
Yeah.
was looking for there, Teresa, so you know, was whether that by chance the sun was in the 12th house by ascendant, which would therefore make that 7 Neptune quite strong. You know, understand what I'm saying? So have you got any aspects from your sun? What are your aspects to your sun? Just curious.
I have a trine with Uranus and T-square with the nodes.
Okay. So there's a strong karmic component there. And what
Yeah.
about your Jupiter and Saturn? Because they show up here as being quite predominant as well.
How did Jupiter and Saturn come up as predominant? Oh, with the life path
Life path,
38.
yeah, being 38. So I
Yeah,
break that
so
down to Jupiter, Saturn. It still
um
equals the sun plus the sun. So really think about that. You got the sun ruling the ascendant and in the first house. There's your two suns. So it's a very
so
strong sun-based chart. Leo, Leo, you know.
yeah, that's a good point. So thanks for asking about Jupiter especially because actually I forgot to mention my Jupiter and Sun are in opposition.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
And any of those, and whereabouts is your Saturn?
Fourth and it's in a whole sign square with the sun, but
There you go.
it's in kind of a wide orb. It's
But it basically forms
what
a
is
whole
it?
sign
Seven
T
seven
squared, doesn't it?
degrees.
It nearly forms a whole sign T squared to the first, seventh, and the fourth house, correct?
If we're reading it with wide orb, yeah.
Yeah. So what we call a whole sign. So in other words,
Yes.
it's squared by house position, T squared by house position.
Yes.
The interesting thing with that, and Courtney hasn't added it in there, but that 1 equals the moon, 2. So here's the situation where the 2 being the fact your Saturn natally is in your fourth house. So they all work. What I'm saying is the energies are there. It's a matter of how you interpret them. And you don't, you know, as somebody who meets you, all I know is you're born on the 7th of August, 85. You know, I can go further into this if I wanted to and go, okay, well, you know, she's born on the 7th, but she's got a couple of 8s in there. So she's going to have a strong Saturn somewhere. You know, she likes to communicate. She's got a 5, blah, blah, blah. I can, you know, pick it out by number if I really wanted to, but I try and hone in on it. But yours is an interesting one because you got a single number, day number, but you get a very strong, complex life path number, which breaks down into, you know, 2 suns and a moon, with Jupiter,
Yeah.
Saturn affecting it. And you've got your sun opposite Jupiter, and by a whole sign T square to Saturn in the house that's naturally the home of the moon. So bingo, it's in your numerology. It has to be, otherwise it wouldn't work either.
Mm.
So who else is there to have a go? Anyone else wanting to have a go?
Covered everyone who's here because Carolyn had to duck out.
Okay.
So any other questions?
I'll
'Cause
tell
we
you
have
what. Why don't you guys interpret mine?
I have a quick question about Asha's chart too. Asha, are you a Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node?
Yes.
Okay, because I like the node stuff too, and just you're talking about the Virgo South. It just felt reminiscent of like a Virgo South Node, so I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, you're spot on there.
I'm also a Pisces North Node and Virgo South Node, so it resonated with me.
Nice, nice.
All right.
Right. So Luke, I know 25 December, is that correct?
Yeah, 1966.
And then 66. Okay. So, okay, and everyone, let's help with the math. So for 2 plus 5
Is it 7?
is 7,
It's the day
which
number.
is Neptune. Okay.
That's
Then
Moon, Mercury, Neptune. Then you've got 2 and 5 is 7, and 3 is 10, 20. When you add another 10, and then you got 12 more, which is 32.
So life path is 32.
Yep. Life path is 32 equals 5.
5, which is Mercury.
You were born on Christmas?
Yeah, it's Christmas Day. That's it.
Wow. I know a
Is that-
couple
is
people
that-
who have that.
Is that a bummer?
Yeah, it can be.
I have 2 friends born on Christmas Day, and they always congratulate each other. And so, so one of them claimed Halloween as her birthday, and the other one just leans into the coming of Christ. You know, he's like, "You're
Yeah.
welcome." I'm here.
Well, I find the hardest thing about Christmas is you can't have a party because no one
Yeah,
will turn up. So what
you
I
got to choose
decided,
a different day.
well, I sort of tried to do that, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a 33 and a third party. So I calculated exactly to the day what it was going to be, and only in Australia do you have a problem with it because it's Anzac Day. And I went, okay, forget it. I'm not doing that. So it didn't happen. But anyway, other than that, it's all good. All right. Who wants to have a little bit of a go at interpreting? And I don't mind who throws their hat in the ring. But you'll find it'll be interesting when I explain to you a bit more about how these sit in the chart. But remember, from a day point of view, you want to interpret it as being Moon Mercury. So the moon being the first component, i.e., what you're going to be doing and what's motivating it being the Mercury, and then how it's used or how it comes out is in Neptune. So who wants to have a bit of an interpretation? And no, I'm not Elton John. So, but it is the same day.
I was quite curious about how Mercury was playing out in your chart because you do love to have a chat.
Thanks, Sasha.
But yeah, I think and I guess from just my own experience getting to know you as well, I feel like you have come out with some fairly intuitive, some just like intuitive guidance or intuitive hits with your communication. So definitely like Jupiter playing a big role there with education, teaching. Have you spent much time abroad?
Yeah, on and off, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not a lot of time, more travel, and usually for work.
Yeah.
In the past, it's been for work rather than now. So yeah, I know you got your everyone's in the
Anyone else?
background.
I'm just gonna mute. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyone else want to have a? I'll elaborate on that for you in a minute, Asha. But anyone else want to have a?
Well, there's a strong Mercury signature there, and that makes sense because you're a highly skilled communicator.
Okay. Yeah.
And that moon's shown up a couple times, and I don't know you very well, but I'm sensing some nurturing in your personality there too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would also maybe say like ability to see the big picture and the details, like the from Jupiter to Mercury is kind of like big scale, small scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that overall. Would you like me to interpret it and give you a bit of insights?
Yes,
Okay.
I speak for us all.
So we discussed in general. I have a Sag rising, which you look at that and you probably wouldn't pick the Sag rising, but I do have Neptune's just rising in my chart, and it opposes my moon. Okay. The moon in my chart is quite predominant in my Vedic in the Vedic chart. My moon is in my 7th house, and it's also in Taurus in both traditional and in Vedic astrology, which is a powerful position. So my moon's exalted in my chart. So whether I like it or not, I've had to deal with the public. Mercury, let's go back to the day number. The moon Mercury is I've always had to deal with the public, but in what way a lot of the time has been in a communications or sales type role. I've had no choice. That's how I made my money. So I was sort of, with Mercury in the 1st house, in a T square to Uranus, Pluto opposite Saturn, it's sort of made me having to sort of work into that sort of industrious way. The Neptune in there is that I've always worked from an intuitive basis. So as a child, I was quite psychic. I still read tarot cards. I always work on my intuition. When I stop working on my intuition, things fail for me. See you, Asha.
Happy
And
birthday.
so that's what sort of happens with the moon and Mercury there. And the Jupiter moon as a life path going to Mercury is that I'm in a situation where I've been a teacher, but I've also had to sort of, you could say, travel, yeah, bring people together. I've had to invent things along the way, and I've always worked in a communications background. So I literally worked selling communications products, everything from radio, paging systems, computer telephony solutions for call centers, you name it. If I look in my phone, unlike a lot of people, I could open it up now and show you I have 3,000 contacts in there, of which I know them all. So what have I done? I've been very much active in the public, getting to know lots and lots of people. That's the moon and Jupiter. And in a mercurial sense, from another point of view, you said nurturing. I've always been in a situation where I like to cook. I tend to do with the cooking at home. I cook because my moon and Neptune makes me highly allergic to a lot of things. I've also that moon, Neptune, and Mercury ruling the intestines. I'm a celiac, but I've been that way since I was a child, not something that's come about later. But I do believe that has been an autoimmune reaction to things that I was exposed to as a child, namely antibiotics. So there's a lot of potential sort of health or unconscious things that go on in my chart. And that Neptune has also been the fact that when I was a child, I was highly psychic. I saw spirits. I thought we all shared a house with people who walked around that no one could see. And, even to the point where I got sent home because I was, saying I reckon I was about 3 and we're all about to have some lunch up the street at a friend's place. And all the kids are sitting around the table. And I was asking the lady, Mrs. Hinckley, if the man standing in the hallway there was going to join us for have food. And I got told, stop scaring the kids. And I went, well, the one here with the hat on, is like, what's wrong with him? And I went home crying to my mother. So I've always been that sort of person. But generally speaking, what I do is I've always been in an education, travel, and sort of technology sort of field, bringing people together and building that up. So that's being a fairly short general overview. So yes, you can see those things working, and that's sort of how I'd probably analyze it fairly quickly. Has anyone got any further questions on that, or should we just do a bit of a summary as to how things and where we're at? How are we going for time, Courtney?
I'm unmuted. We're at the end. I think we can do the summary, wrap it up if anyone has any other questions.
All right. So in summary, okay, what we're doing is we're basically taking the birth date and the whole birth date and adding up the life path number and using those two numbers in order to interpret somebody's overall personality traits, things happening in their lives, etc., etc. And we're doing it I call it like it's like a life hack. So in other words, most people you meet don't know their birth time. They want to know as an astrologer, can you tell me about me? And the idea of it is that you can utilize this technique in order to help you get some insights into what's actually happening in the chart without actually having the chart. The principle of that is that the numerology, if it's to work, it has to be associated or related in the same way astrology is. So I'm just tying the two together to make this a fairly simple, when I say simple to work out, but not necessarily simple to interpret, analysis of how it all works. But in general, this is something I will expand on. As I said, I'm going to make a little series of, I call them life hacks, and I'm going to turn that into a course. There's probably about 10 of them, And I was in the process of doing them, but everything stopped when I had to sort of do all the building of the community myself rather than get some assistance. So I was about 3 in, but this one was just the start of some of this one. I need to put it together today. But look, any questions on this? If you want me to, we can do some more of this down the track. But give me some feedback. Even leave some feedback in the community if you want to sort of say, hey, and any questions you've got on it as well, and I can answer those. But go out and try it. That's what I'm going to say. Just go out and try it. Go out and have a
You
bit of fun.
should post it and then invite, get like 5 more people and go through, you know what I mean? Like get like new people to toss in their birthdays
details.
and let
Yep.
people get the opportunity, because it is really insightful. And you're right, like everyone is always asking you for the quick like party trick, like I'm going on a cruise and they're like, well, can you do readings for people? And I'm like, no.
Courtney, use this.
Yeah, I'll try it on the cruise. We'll see.
Get a little bit of practice before then. But yes, I reckon you're going to find. And do me a favor, when you come back, tell me how it worked, because I guarantee you're going to people are going to go, how did you know that?
Mhm.
You'll get a few things wrong, but you might like for example with Asher, that Sun Pluto, we had to determine. I didn't want to say someone was been out of your life for a period, and I did look at it and think Sun Pluto can be quite heavy, especially when she had the Jupiter Pluto. But she openly admitted that she lost her mum when she was young, and therefore exact, and that gives you straight away. Okay, now I know how that's working. Yes, now I understand the relationship between her and her father, and that's why I went. The next one was, did you do some traveling? Because there was that Jupiter Pluto. She said, oh yeah, we traveled around a lot. So bingo, it leads you into the next lot. It's just a matter of, like anything, you ask questions when you open up a reading, and you start seeing how the planetary energies are working, and then you can elaborate. So. Anyway, I will sign off. I'm glad you all enjoyed, and I'll post this once I get it all sort of sorted. But we'll see you in a
very fun.
fortnight.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
guys. I'll just
See
stop
you
the
next time.
recording. Hang on, pause. We'll stop recording, and we'll catch you later.